Welcome to the Mike Knox-Comedy podcast. I am your host, Mike Knox. It has been raining, I believe, for what seems forever in Los Angeles, and I know this people that live in other places, like places that I imagine, I've never been there, but places that I imagine would be like 20 feet of snow. I know that you think that I'm being petty, but I don't remember it raining this long. I remember in the 90s, it had this series, especially at this time, because my friend had a birthday. I think it was his 21st birthday. And it was like this party where his parents bussed us to the Ritz-Carlton in Santa Barbara. And then it was a huge party, and they brought in like all these video games and lots of grog. And we danced the night away. It was a wonderful party, but there was such a storm at that time in March. I believe it was March 10th. That it washed out the 101 freeway, and nobody could get through. So people that were coming up from like Los Angeles to go to the party couldn't go to the party because they were trapped. And then, of course, there's a lot of flooding in Montecito, Santa Barbara, which always seems to happen when it rains heavily. Those huge homes just get surrounded by mud. So, and I also think that happened like 10 years ago. I just think that I think after a few weeks we just forget. But it did snow twice, which has never happened to me when I've lived in this area of northern Los Angeles for the last 15, 16 years. So that was cool. It snowed twice, and it was just a light little snow. Very interesting. And at one point, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but at one point, it just seemed like it was only snowing over the area of my house. I drove down to the store to get some Fruity Pebbles, and that's probably, I don't know, a quarter mile away maybe. Totally blue skies. Drove back up to my house, still snowing. So it's just, to me, I like it. It's great weather, except in Los Angeles, if you're driving on any of the freeways, everybody's crashing. It doesn't have anything to do with the rain. It's just that they're so confused, surrounded by water, that they just crash their cars. And it's this odd crashing that I've seen lately of just these singular accidents, people just driving into stuff. So I'm just assuming they're out there texting. I don't really know. But jumping into places to see in California, I was kind of like to explore places. So I was looking at this before traveling in your car. It was by railroad. So a lot of the wealthy people had their own rail cars, but they also were able to build their own railroad systems. So I found this interesting. In 1906, John Spreckels is, I believe, sugar company, ignored all the naysayers and started construction on his own impossible railroad. Though it was never used, there's a huge trestle, there's abandoned railroad cars, and this is out in, I think, near the Mojave Desert, San Bernardino. There's a lot of cool stuff there because they had a lot of mines that are abandoned. So you had to take railroad to kind of get in and out, and then to haul stuff out of the mines. And I've just always been fascinated. I don't exactly want to go into a mine, but I've always been fascinated with mines and people that would work in the mines, because a lot of times those guys would sleep in there. They'd be in there 24 hours a day, chasing that gold or whatever they're chasing. I mean, I know there were a lot of other different types of mines, but if I were a miner, it would definitely be all gold. I know they had lime kilns, and you could still see those lime kilns in San Bernardino County, and that lime is basically like the concrete part, that the glue that bounded the bricks together and everything else. 45 Bay Area officers were hired in 2006, and all of their requirements were waived. This is what I've been talking about, and I know this happened. I've got vague proof, but this is what happens every time you see some sort of shooting or some sort of. This is what happened with Rampart in the 90s. Was that they hired very unqualified people. A lot of them were, had been in prison, or they'd had criminal charges against them, drug charges, stuff like that. And they waived all the requirements because they just wanted to push these people through. So San Francisco's been doing that since 2016. And of course, shocker, what do you think happened? The city's, the taxpayer, I should say, is going to have to pay out a lot of money. So they did not, these 45 officers did not meet the requirements for citizenship, fingerprinting, graduation, records, incomplete psychological exams. Hey, let's just go to the mental institution and pick up some cops. That's a great idea. I just love how they don't ever say like who put that name on paper. Whose bright idea was that? Who was that at the time? Do you think it was the mayor at that time? Who do you think's in charge of the police? I just have to chuckle at those stories because there's nothing else you could do. It's just such insanity. I was reading about 5 tips on your healthy relationship, and I know that everybody has their own tips on relationships, but this in particular article was out of California, and this therapist was saying, always pause during arguments. I could agree with that because you get your emotions in the way. Number 2 was employ a turning toward policy. I have no idea what you're talking about. It gives no explanation. So I don't know what to tell you. Number 3 is carry out small acts of kindness. See, I can see where the man is thinking that he's doing something nice by washing the dishes once, and then he holds resentment for the rest of his life that he washed the dishes once, and he harbors that resentment and uses that against his spouse there. Number 4, voice gratitude. I agree with that. I just think for men it's hard vocally to say anything because we're kind of like Neanderthals. Number 5, make time for weekly dates. I totally disagree with this one because then you get into the it's great to go out and have this, but who's doing this weekly with a family? I know there's some psychos out there that do that weekly, but I think they should add a number 6, and that's the maintaining a healthy relationship is just 2 people making fun of everybody else outside of their relationship. That's the goal, or the key, not the goal. The goal, of course, I think the goal that we're all talking about is that everybody remain in the relationship and stay together, because there's so many outside factors like your phone that probably breaks up a lot of relationships, I bet. And of course, all the banks are collapsing around us, and everybody is then assuring us that we're going to be okay because, you know, if you're like me and you have $15 in the bank, you don't need to worry about it. It's those people that have the $10 million in the bank that they have to worry about. But but banks usually have, or they're supposed to be federally insured. Like if you were to, the bank was to go under, you're then going to be insured for up to $250,000, which I don't believe that at all, because every interaction that I've had with several different banks, it doesn't matter. They're just so lazy now because they're not required to do anything. You go, you take your money to the bank, and they're like, "Oh, you can't touch your money for the next 3 days. We need to find out if it's real." And then they're right out the back door, loaning your money out to other people, or paying off their debts with your money, but telling you can't access your money. So to me, it's a very I can't call it corrupt, but it is a very bad system because of the fact that you're just able to, print money, and the bank is allowed to do whatever they want. There's kind of very little regulations. They get to come up with creative financing. And most of these big banks are just, they're doing mortgages or doing some sort of real estate transaction. They're doing huge amounts of money so that they can make money. And that's the key for all of them. And where we've been for the last couple years is just printing money and giving money away. And especially during COVID-19, you're giving huge amounts of loans to people that really didn't need them, and now you're kind of picking up the pieces, and everybody acts shocked that they don't know where the money went, and that's where I find it is ridiculous. I don't know if you've been watching the Murdaugh case. This is the creepy little redheaded guy that killed his whole family and embezzled a bunch of money. He was a lawyer, and if you watch that documentary, in it there's a kid named Stephen Smith who gets murdered on the side of the highway, and they finally are calling it a homicide. Before it was, this kid was bashed in the head. It must have been an accident. Clearly doesn't look like an accident at all. A lot of kids at the high school were saying they knew who did it. There's one remaining kid left in that family, and all fingers point to him. You still have people, I know that you're innocent until proven guilty, but this is my one little thought here, is especially in high schools, the rumors get around. The rumors are the poor man's entertainment, and any hint of rumors, especially in high school, there's some validity to it. they're saying this one kid was with a group of others, then those group of others told everybody. So it was an open secret in the high school that he's the one that killed this kid that was on the side of the road. And I got to tell you, rest in peace, buddy. And I'm going to be happy when they catch your killer. And speaking of killers, the Idaho killer, Brian Kohberger, I was also watching that documentary, which leaves a lot of stuff out, but I do want to talk about that. And the reason that I want to talk about it is it's so weird. So they show in the documentary that, and I'm not going to spoil anything by telling you about the documentary, but he's basically like, he's a criminologist getting his PhD or had his PhD in crime. So he's thinking, the angle is, I'm going to see what it's like to commit a crime. And let me just tell you, for the people that want to know what it's like to commit a crime, don't do it, because you're not a criminal. Criminals know this. Everybody's laughing at you. You're an idiot. Nobody is proud of you for what you did. You killed 4 attractive people, and you're a moron. And for you to think that you're above the law or that you're above everybody's mental thinking, you're a moron. That's what makes you an idiot. And yes, I know, proven until guilty, but there's so much evidence against you. And I'll get to my only one question. But in the documentary, they're showing that he kills him with a knife, but he leaves the sheath behind, and it's got his DNA on it. And if he doesn't know any of these kids, and he lives in Washington, and they live in Idaho, I didn't know how close those states were before, until I looked at a map. And so he's only like 15 miles away. He drives his car there. His cell phone pings multiple times off the area. Eyewitnesses say they see his car. They, see one of the witnesses in the house says it's a guy with bushy eyebrows. You look at him, he's got bushy eyebrows. So out of all the millions of people in the world, they're placing a car that looks like his, a person that looks like his. He's in the house. It's good detective work on the behalf of law enforcement, because they catch this guy. But the amount of evidence that this moron who's supposed to have a PhD in criminology left behind, and I know that you probably didn't take a forensic class or whatever, or watch any detective show, but you're a moron. And so my question is, is it this easy really? But my question is, why did you pick that place with those people in there? And my thought, this is just my opinion, is that he was probably on Instagram and saw one of those hot blondes, and he probably, kept trying to DM them, and they wouldn't answer him. And so his answer to that was, "I just kill everybody." So, I'm in a gray area about the death penalty, but if anybody deserves it, it's this guy. Just because there was no need for you to commit a crime. There was no need for you to snuff out 4 college kids' lives. I've been to college. It's a lot of fun. And it's the last time you're going to have fun like that in your entire life. And here comes this idiot that breaks into your house to murder you. And for some unknown reason, leaves some roommates there still alive. One of the roommates saw him, and he walked past her. They didn't quite explain whether he saw her or not. But I do remember I lived in a house with 5 roommates. We never locked the door. People were in and out all the time. It was a college town, so you had people stumbling into your house that were drunk, and you'd just be like, "Hey, you don't live here." And then the guy would be like, "I don't live here." And they'd be like, "No, you don't live here. Get out of here." "Okay." So I can't really recall, except for maybe like a drunken fight or something like that. Relatively everybody got along at that time. And it wasn't until a few years later until another moron drove his car down the street and ran over a bunch of kids. So prior to that, I think that I went to college at a good time, and I lived with roommates at a good time. And now it's just scary out there when you just, the idea that there's some idiot that's not even a criminal, that's gone to college and spent all of his time trying to earn his education to turn around and murder people like that is just so dumb. And I know we're in this time of, I know he had his reasons. There's no reason for this. You have no reason for doing that at all. I was looking up, because I think one of the sad things for everybody there is that you can't start your life. And it made me think of I'm sure one of them wanted to get married, have kids, have a family of their own. I was looking up the first, when was the the act of the getting down on one knee and proposing to somebody, and the engagement ring. I looked it up, and the engagement ring traces back to 1477, when Archduke Maximilian of Austria proposed to Mary of Burgundy. This exchange brought a tradition that caught on with the elites of society. So presenting a ring to the woman, but the engagement rings did not become popular until the 1900s, and I found that very interesting. You got like 400 and something years of. I'm curious. I should have looked it up, but how they proposed before that, or when you're not proposing with a ring, are you just like, are you sending a letter? Is it somebody else that's proposing for you? Is it a forced proposal? Is the dowry, like they, bought you a futon or a dresser, and they bring that over with them to propose? I got to look into that more. But I definitely will get back to you on that one. The other thing I find interesting about the banks collapsing is that then you have like a stock market that they're like, the stock market surges, and it just gets very confusing for a lot of people. And I have to feel sorry for all the young people that are getting into buying a home now and saving 401k or 457 or IRA, just because the market has not really a lot of rules, and I can't figure out why it's high or why it's low. And the best advice I can give to people is just to put your money, save something. I like the analogy of you save $100 a year for 40 years, you would have $1 million technically with 12% return. That's the key, is compound interest. Look that up. But if you save up that entire, save up for your entire lifetime there and have 500,000, but have something, because it's going to go quick. Right after college, man, it goes real quick. I was reading about Sonic and Raising Cane's restaurants. I've never been to Sonic, and I've never been to Raising Cane's. I do want to go to Sonic. I just can never really find the time to get there. They are forced to close because their suppliers could not get chicken to them. I don't think all of them have closed, obviously, but I got to tell you that a Sonic chicken sandwich sounds delicious. But yeah, a lot of businesses have been closing, and a lot of fast food places. I just remember at the start of COVID, there was like in Idaho, they were burning like truckloads of potatoes because those distributors couldn't get them to restaurants anymore because the restaurants were closed. And so I guess that has now affected the chicken market. Replica, which I want to go there. I don't care that it's a replica of Noah's Ark. I like to go places, and then I like to go there, go quickly in and out, go to the gift store, maybe get a souvenir, and then leave, and then make a mental note that I went there. But Noah's Ark is filing a lawsuit over rain damage. You can mark that down for irony, because Noah's Ark was, of course, the ark. Read your Bible, everybody. That was the last floating thing after the great storm. If you would like to go to a place that I'm going to go to, the Barbie, World of Barbie house is opening up in Santa Monica. I got my tickets. I don't know what it is. I'm going to take my kid there. I guess they did a replica Barbie house, so it looks like a lot of pink. And hopefully that they have a souvenir shop. I can get in, I can get out, and I can get a souvenir. There was a... everybody's got pets, but not. I'm always interested in the people that have like an odd-looking pet or a pet that most people don't have. And there is a Louisiana couple that were told by the law enforcement that they were not allowed to have their 22-pound Nutra, a beady-eyed, orange-toothed, rat-tailed rodent commonly considered a wetland. These things damage the wetlands, like they eat everything. They're kind of like that snakehead fish, but for land. So you're not allowed to have these as pets, but they kind of just gave up because Denny and Myra fought for this Nutra, which, if you've ever seen a Nutra, it's just a giant rat. It's like a gigantic rat. And I think that they're great. I think that they would probably make a wonderful pet. I would like to have one just because they're so interesting. I could snuggle with it. We could go swimming in the pool. We could frolic with the dogs. There's lots of things you could do with a Nutra. It brought me back to... when I lived in Santa Barbara. We went to the Santa Barbara Zoo one day with my roommates, and there was a Nutra in a pen, but the pen wasn't like, it was just like some, like the old Western, like a horse pen. So it was like there was a lot of openings in it. Well, this baby comes out of nowhere and sticks its hand through the logs of the fence, and the Nutra starts to like it looks like it's about to bite its arm off. And I'm just like frozen in fear because I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't want to be a person that's grabbing somebody's kid. I don't want to be a person, I don't like the scenario of like, in my head, I was playing in my head, and I'd had a couple drinks, don't criticize me. You're at the zoo, you have to drink. But I didn't want to, grab a kid and then the mom being like, help me, he's kidnapping my kid. And then I'm like, no, it was the Nutra. And then they're like, what's a Nutra? Because I saw this giant rat animal and I didn't know what it was or what it was called. And there was no signs up or anything for the Nutra. It just looked like a giant friggin' rat, like a gigantic rat. And luckily the mother ran over and pulled the arm away from the baby, and the baby survived. But it was a close call for all of us at the zoo, and I've never forgotten the Nutra that almost attacked the little baby. And so far, I've never heard of a Nutra attacking a baby story in the news yet. Also, another place that I would like to go to, in Burbank, there are these little homes. It's like a little row of little homes for like little people. And I've never known the background of it, and I finally figured out the background of it. And this was, these little homes were made, it's on Hollywood Way, and they're basically made for the studios. They're called Cinderella Cottages. They were made for Disney Studios. Or I guess it's close to Disney Studios, but Warner Brothers had them built for the screenwriters to work and the actors to stay. If they stayed all night, they could go over to these homes. I think that's pretty cool that the studio, I doubt this even exists anymore, but the studio building new homes, and then they're homes that you could stay at because you're working at the studio. That's when the studios were studios. And when you go, but you drive by them, you think, oh, the Disney must own them because Disney's close by, but it's Warner Brothers. They built them for them. Now they're, of course, private residences. But I think it would be a cool place to live. It's just such a busy street, though, so you got to imagine when it was not around there. But Disney, according to the news, is going to have a layoff wave of 4,000 people as part of a reorganization to cut $5.5 billion in spending cuts. I don't really go to Disneyland because the lines are so long and I get a lot of anxiety. But I think we're up to, what are we up to? Like 125 something for a ticket. And so it's so crazy to think that when Disneyland started, it was $1.50 for Disneyland. And but what's great about Disneyland, though, again, you can go there and you can drink. They have alcohol. I'm pretty sure it's both sides now. It used to just be California Adventure, but that's what you got to do when you're a parent. You just got to power through it and have a couple cocktails at Disneyland because you're enclosed in there. It's a magical place. Adam Sandler received the Mark Twain Prize of Humor Award. I think that's really cool. He deserves it. He's a great stand-up. He's a great actor. He is a great writer. I've always liked him. Well-deserved award. And the Hollywood sign celebrates 100 years. Hollywoodland. If you don't know the history about Hollywoodland, it was basically the gigantic Hollywood sign used to say Hollywoodland. And if you ever go there, venture into Beechwood Canyon, you'll actually be able to see the landmark entrance, which is this stone, kind of looks like a little, the entrance to a castle. And so they've got their signs up there. But to me, that's another cool part about the Hollywood sign is that you drive through the community and you kind of get a grasp of that it was a community. And then it was also like inside there was also like a bohemian, I don't want to say it's a cult, but it was like for artists and stuff like that in the 40s, and there were these different homes, and so you can actually see these different types of homes that are in that area, and I can't remember the name of it, but is no longer there. Also, in the news, I always like to mention when hostages are returned, because I find it fascinating that people go to other countries and get kidnapped, and then the kidnappers keep them alive for so long. So this guy, Jeffrey Wood, went over to Africa and was held for 6 friggin' years. 6 years he's over there. Went over there as an aid worker and was abducted. I mean, I have so many questions about this, and the news just doesn't say anything about it. They don't even talk about how that came about. So he and a French journalist disappeared. The French journalist disappeared in 2021. But you're over there, you get kidnapped. I mean, that must just been hell on earth for that guy. And I'm glad that you were back, Jeffrey, and I'm glad that you're returned to your family. That's just a crazy, crazy story. Also, another crazy story I was reading is if you cut up onions, slice some onions, and put them in your sock and sleep with them. I'm never going to do this, but it is supposed to have. The experts claim there's over 7,000 different points, I guess, on the bottom of your feet, and it's supposed to cleanse you and make you, trip the light's fantastic. I've never heard of this before, and I'm curious if anybody else has. Send me a message on TikTok if you've ever tried. By the way, I changed my TikTok. It's not Famous Graves anymore. It's Mike Knox-Comedy. Again, I just got stopped doing Famous Graves. I kind of, again, got pigeonholed with the Graves part, and so I had to switch it over to Mike Knox. And there's a lot of Mike Knoxes, so it's Mike Knox Comedy. Just live with it. I'm trying to get through it. But if DM me on there if you've ever put onions in your socks. It's raining in LA, and also the LA teachers are going on strike again. And it's as their union is SEIU, that is the largest union. They rejected their 23% raise. California, that's your problem, is these unions have such a hold politically on everybody, and they generate so much, millions and millions and millions of dollars, and I don't ever see it going away, and you just got to live with it. And there's really nothing that you can say. It's just a bloated system like everything else. And they've got all the money to do whatever they wanted. Also, speaking of money, Jewel, the pop star, who I find very, very nice. I've seen her, I believe, on TikTok, and she's very, very pleasant. And her mother apparently embezzled $100 million from her, and I feel so bad for you. And you're a great singer, artist, songwriter, and I wish you the best. And that what sucks the most is when it's the betrayal of your family. And that seems to have happened quite a bit with celebrities. I don't think I'm ever going to get there money-wise. If my mother did steal any money from me, it would be $27, and she can have it. Of the day, it is the actor Robert Mitchum. He was born in 1917, passed away in 1997. I have a 6 degrees of separation with him. I never met him, but I have a good story. He was known as the anti-hero in most of his roles in film noir in his appearances. He received nominations for Academy Award and for BAFTA Award. He received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1984 and the Golden Globe Cecil B. DeMille Award in 1992. He's rated number 23 on the American Film Institute's list of the greatest male stars of American cinema. He rose to fame with an Academy Award for the Best Supporting Actor in The Story of G.I. Joe, 1945. I have not seen that film. I need to see it now. Wasn't even aware that it was a film. Roger Ebert called Mitchum his favorite movie star and the soul of film noir. Mitchum was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, August 6th, 1917, into a Methodist family of English, Scottish, Irish, Norwegian descent. His father worked in a shipyard and railroad worker, and his mother was an immigrant and the daughter of a sea captain. His older sister, known as Julie Mitchum during her acting career, was born in 1914. His brother James was crushed to death the father was crushed to death in a railroad yard incident in Charleston, South Carolina, in 1919. His widow was awarded a government pension and soon realized that she was pregnant again with her third child, John, who was born in September of that year. Robert Mitchum, in the 1930s, moved to the West Coast and joined up with a playhouse in Long Beach. He arrived in 1936. He worked as a ghostwriter for an astrologer, and his sister persuaded him to join the Players Guild in Long Beach. So it doesn't work this way anymore, and I miss this boat, but a lot of them would join, like Pasadena Playhouse was a big thing. Pasadena Playhouse actually had its own, it was kind of considered an acting school at a time, and so a lot of actors went there, and a lot of actors went to the Players Guild in Long Beach, and that's how you became famous. You did plays, and then somebody, usually a casting director would find you and put you into films. In 1940, he returned to Delaware to marry Dorothy Spence, and they moved back to California. He gave up his artistic pursuits at the birth of his first child, and his two other children. He found steady employment as a machine operator during World War II with Lockheed Aircraft Corporation, but the noise of the machinery damaged his hearing. He also suffered a nervous breakdown, in which resulted in temporary vision problems due to job-related stress. I hear you on that one, buddy. I know exactly that job-related stress and how that stuff goes. He then sought work again in film, performing initially as an extra and in small parts. His agent got him an interview with Harry Sherman, the producer of Paramount's Hop Alone Cassidy Westerns, which starred William Boyd. He played in several films as a villain in 1942 and 43. He was initially known for his work in film noir, his first film being 1944's B-movie When Strangers Marry. He also did Undercurrent, The Locket, and Pursued. He worked steadily in the 50s and 60s. I see a nice photo with him with Jane Russell, beautiful. He was with a string. He was with Deborah Kerr. He, 1955, formed his own production company and made 5 films for United Artists and produced 4 of them. He's remembered in 1958 in Thunder Road, which was loosely based on an incident in which a driver transporting moonshine was said to have fatally crashed on a Kingston Pike in Knoxville, Tennessee, somewhere between Burden Hill and Morrill Road. According to the writer, the incident occurred in 1952, which seems kind of ridiculous. And then he was also put in jail because there's pictures of him sweeping up, and I think it's Lincoln Heights Jail, which is it's abandoned jail in Los Angeles. It's not really there anymore. But I think that kind of cemented him as the cool guy. He had some controversies also at a premiere for that championship season. He was intoxicated and assaulted a reporter and threw a basketball that he was holding at a female photographer from Time magazine, injuring her neck and knocking out her 2 teeth. Wow, I never heard that story. She sued him for $30 million in damages. The suit eventually cost him his salary from the film. You don't hear too much about Betty Ford Clinic anymore, but that's pretty much in the 80s. That's where everybody went to. The Betty Ford Clinic there, I believe it was in Palm Springs. And I always thought to myself, it seems like a nice place. This was a good quote from Robert Mitchum. He said, "This is not a tough job. You read a script. If you like the part and the money is okay, you do it. Then you remember your lines, you show up on time, you do what the director tells you to do. When you finish, then go on to the next part. That's it." Yeah, it seems pretty easy. I'm just, the anxiety of trying to remember my lines would be the hard part for me. The money would be great, though. A lifelong smoker, Mitchum died in 1997, 5 weeks before his 80th birthday, in Santa Barbara from lung cancer and emphysema. His body was cremated and his ashes scattered at sea. There is a cenotaph at the Oddfellows Cemetery in Delaware. He was survived by his wife of 57 years, Dorothy, and she passed away in 2014 in Santa Barbara. I lived in Santa Barbara. So here is my Robert Mitchum story. It was the very first TV show I auditioned for. I cannot remember the name of it, but basically when I found out that the idea was that a couple kids need like a guardian or something for school, so they don't have to go to an orphanage. And they find Robert Mitchum, who's like a homeless guy. And I just thought when I was going in for that audition, Robert Mitchum, it's supposed to be kind of like a comedy, and he was like a really rough, gruff guy. And I just don't see him playing comedy. I didn't get the part because they said I looked too old, although the kid that they chose looked just like me, maybe a little shorter. And so that, that was kind of where my acting career ended because I was so devastated that I didn't get that part. But that show got canceled, I think after 4 or 5. I tried to watch it. It was extremely hard to watch, Robert Mitchum as a homeless guy. Subscribe, tell me who else you want me to see out there in the graveyard. And I appreciate everybody listening to the Mike Knox Comedy Podcast.